guys, XX the Blade here again, and I haven't made any videos for a while, and hey, you notice any changes? I got a haircut, yeah, but I did it just for this video. So I'm here today bringing you a new type of video I don't think I've done before, a top 10, yes, a top 10, a top list, but except it's not top 10, it's not a 10, it's top, but it's not 10. You guess what it is? 1, no. 2, no. 3, no. 4, no. 5, yes. Top 5. What's the top 5 in? Well, I'll tell you. Take a guess. That's right. Top 5 favorite countries of the 1800s for me to learn about. Yes, I like history. History is one of my favorite things. I like to read about history. And one of my favorite periods is the 1800s. I don't know why. I just really like the 1800s. I like learning about the 1800s. I like learning about the rebellions, the history, the wars, the colonialism, the imperialism, the industry, the industrial revolutions of the 1800s of multiple countries. Let's get started. All right, this is not, I'm going to change the video. It's not top anymore. It's just my 5. This is no particular order. All right, 5. My first one, is France. France is one of my favorite countries to learn about. I'm a little bit biased since, I've been there. I went on a tour around Normandy, around D-Day sites in northern France, such as Pointe du Hoc and Omaha Beach, so I'm pretty biased on the World War II side, but I'm focusing on the 1800s side. So there's multiple reasons why I find France so interesting. It just has so much history, such as Napoleonic Wars of the early 1800s, around 1800 to 1815, I believe. Yes, I should be right. The Bourbon Restoration, because since Napoleon was defeated in 1815, I believe, pretty sure it's 1815, but he was defeated by all the other powers of Europe, and the reason everybody else in Europe was invading Napoleon was because they didn't like Napoleon, they didn't like the government that he was in charge of, because after the French revolutions and all, it turned into a republic and then into a military government led by Napoleon. So all the other countries said, I don't like that, that ruins the balance of power in Europe, they're going to invade everybody, blah, blah, blah. And guess what they did? You're right, they invaded everybody. They puppeted Italy. Napoleon put one of his family members on the throne in Italy. He did the same in Spain. He invaded the Rhineland. It's right above, it's like close to Germany, close to France. So he basically dismantled the whole Holy Roman Empire, and that was started in the 800s and then was dismantled by Napoleon in the 1800s. Thanks a lot. You suck. And I find that very interesting. Yeah, I find that interesting. I don't know why. But the Bourbon Restoration, the other powers in Europe said, hey, we're going to put the old dynasty back on the throne in France. So that's what they did, the Bourbons. And then here comes the July dynasty. I'm not very knowledgeable. I just find it very interesting. But it was in the 1830s, and the July Revolution. It was it's when there was a revolution in the 1830s. There was a family that didn't like the Bourbons, and they were also monarchists. So those monarchists said, "Hey, you're gonna not be the leading monarchists anymore. I'm gonna be in charge." And so that's what they did. That was in the 1830s. Until like 15 years later, boom, the revolutions of 1848. Now this was all across Europe, where it was a wave of waves of liberalism was going through Europe, and there was a whole bunch of revolutions. And there was only a few that was successful, like Vienna in Austria, in the Austrian Empire. They were successful. They did something. The liberals in France, they turned France from the monarchy to a republic in 1848, the Second Republic. What I mean by liberalism is not the typical liberal Democrats like we have today in America. Liberalism just means like, oh yeah, we want rights. We have human rights. We want that republic. We the people are in charge, not those freaking corrupt leaders and stuff. We want the people are the people that matter. That's what I mean. So I find the revolutions of 1848 very interesting. Second, that was the Second French Republic that came after that. That resulted from that. And Napoleon III, one of Napoleon's sons, he became president during that republic in the 1860s, I believe, 1850s. And he actually performed a coup d'etat and took over the government, and he turned the republic into an empire again. I believe it was the Second French Empire. And the Germans, they unified, all the little tiny German states, they unified in the 1860s, and then invaded France, beat them, and took Alsace-Lorraine, the pointy part of France, and they took that, and then what I find very interesting is they sieged Paris, the Germans, and then they won the war. And what resulted from them dismantling the Second French Empire is that there was a power vacuum in Paris, and then I don't believe all of Paris, but parts of Paris, different districts, they because France was very socialist during this time, they founded the French Commune, the Paris Commune. It was the first socialist state in the entire world ever. But it only lasted a couple months, so nobody really counts that. People count Russia instead. Yeah, so then the Third Republic came. And then what's called the Belle Epoque was the time after the war, where people were very optimistic about the future of France. And during this time, the Scramble of Africa in the 1880s popped up. And people were very excited about, colonizing Africa and genocides and stuff. So yeah, I find the history of France very interesting in the 1800s. So my second country I'm very interested about in the 1800s, the Qing Empire, or China. The Qing were the dynasty in charge of China during this time. And they were Manchurians. They came from Manchuria. They came from this part. They came from this part of China, and they came into power in the 1600s. And what I find interesting is, the Opium War in the 1830s, 1840s, when Britain was selling opium and drugs to people in China. And the government and everybody was getting addicted, and then China was like, nuh-uh, you're not selling in China anymore. You're not selling drugs because we don't like drugs. And then Britain was like, we're selling drugs, and they invaded China, killed a bunch of them, and took Hong Kong, and sold some more drugs. Because that's what happened back in that day. The Taiping Rebellion I find interesting. It was when in like the middle right of Middle East of China was there was a guy who thought that he was the reincarnation of Jesus or the brother of Jesus, and then he was like, I'm Christian. China's a Christian. It should be Christian. Everybody should be Christian. And then there was a whole civil war for 14 years, and millions of people died during that time of 14 years. And it was the deadliest conflict of the 1800s. And the second deadliest, I believe, was the American Civil War. But no, it goes to China. It goes to the Taiping Rebellion. And there's also the Boxer Rebellion in, I believe, the 1890s, where there was a bunch of people in China. They were like, "Oh no, there's too much Western influence in the world in China. We're gonna take over the government." And then all the Western nations moved in and said, "Nuh-uh, nuh-uh," and then they killed the Chinese and left. That's what they did. They killed Chinese. There was a lot of Chinese oppression in the 1800s, as you can see in America. The U.S. government set up a quota for the amount of Chinese they could let in because they didn't like the Chinese, and then there was a lot of Chinese, and they said, "No more Chinese." They were a very oppressed group in the 1800s. And then you go into, in the Sino-Japanese, where the Japanese invaded China and took Korea, and then in World War II, the Japanese came and killed Chinese again. It was a bad time. It really was. China was a very oppressed group during this time, and I find that very interesting. I do not like that they were oppressed, but I find it interesting. I find Germany very interesting as well. Germany / Prussia. Prussia was the preceding state that unified Germany. The German states that became Germany. I find that the unification very interesting, and the German Austrian Brothers War. It was Germany and Austria. They were competing for influence in over the German states, because Austria, they're German too, but the empire was bigger than just those German groups. So it was just and they were competing for influence in the German region. And during the Brothers' War, Germany invaded Austria for that influence over those German states, and Germany won, and then influenced all the German states, and then formed Germany. And I find the industrial capacity of the Industrial Revolution of Germany very interesting. I find it very interesting how industrial it was back in the day. In the United States, I'm a little biased. I try not to be try to be very biased, but I find Western expansion very interesting. The genocides were bad. The genocides against the Native Americans and the Trail of Tears and the expulsion of them from their native lands into out west, and then the formation of Native American reservations, Indian reservations. I find that very interesting. And I find the United States being very isolated during this time, diplomatically isolated, refusing to be a part of any other affairs that wasn't American, and not taking part in European affairs until all that changed in the 1890s, 1899, when they invaded Spanish Cuba to free the Cubans from Spanish oppression, and then took Cuba, Philippines, Guam, some other places. I forget what else. I believe there's something else. But I find their transition into being very imperial very interesting. And lastly, another country I find interesting is the United Kingdom. Yes, I had to go there. I had to say it. What list of interesting countries during the 1800s does not have the United Kingdom? Half of the stuff I said is a result of the United Kingdom. United Kingdom, they were a catalyst of many, many events and much history from this time. So, and all the atrocities that they committed in India, in Africa, and everywhere else. Very interesting. I just find it interesting, okay? You don't have to. I'm not trying to influence anybody. I'm just trying to let you guys know, hey, this is just the type of person I am. This is just who I am. And the stuff I said, I find interesting. And I just wanted to let you guys know, hey, this is what XX the Blade XX finds interesting. So hey, have a good day. And learn some history. It's pretty interesting. Peace out.